Okay, good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Can anyone hear me? Good evening, Precious. How are you? How are you, ma? Or is Precious ma or sir? I believe ma. Okay, good evening, everybody. How was it today? How was the weekend? Okay, thanks for the confirmation. Loud and clear. Thank you, Felix. Good evening, Miriam. Good evening, Divine. Francis, good evening. Weekend was fine in me. Good to know. Okay, so you're welcome. Today would be I think this will be session 7. Session 7. And we have one more session to go after now. So, which means we need to start putting the pieces together. We need to start tidying things up as we gradually approach the end of the Excel phase. Week 3, class 7. Yes, that's correct. Okay. So everybody let me know. How do you feel about Excel now? How do you feel about Excel now? What was your perception of Excel and what do you feel about it now? Samuel, what happened? Adeoshun, you are still counting 6. Wonderful, Shell. That's good. You feel good, Tosin. That's nice. Fatima feels great. Excel is interesting, beautiful. Excel is sweet, Rachel. Okay. Confident, Kinde. Great, Moses. I love what I'm seeing. Excellence is in JSS3. That's super. Excellence, when is your graduation? Adebisi, you're more confident now. Chima, that's amazing. Good. Maybe after your session on Wednesday, some of you will go on LinkedIn and you update your status. You say that you are now an expert in Excel. Don't let me see it. Excel is interesting, alright? You've received clarity. You still left out victory. Hey, sorry about that. Don't worry. You can still catch up if you want to. Excel is underrated. It's super interesting. Okay. But I hope all of you did not miss my instruction. If I see it on anybody's profile that you are now an Excel expert, we'll fight. That's just by the way. Very sweet like Akara and his grandchild. Dorcas, I like that. I like that. Anything that compares to Akara is always good to hear. Ah, Fatima, you have already put it there. No, no, go and remove it. Or you put my name there. That's I'm the one that said you should remove it. Abiodi is now an Excel expert. Okay, I hear. But again, the idea or the goal is that you should have a good foundation as to what is possible in Excel, such that you would not see anybody that is doing something in Excel as a magician. I know before now, a lot of you, when you see people combine or they do some calculation in Excel, you're already thinking that, how is this even possible? All right. But I believe that at this time, yes, you may not be there yet, but you are now lots more confident. You're now lots more comfortable, and you think you can do stuff in Excel too, which is what makes sense. So in some ways, we are proud, we are happy that we've been able to impact you guys, and we've been able to achieve some things together. So which is the goal. Samuel, where are you going to? Yes, David, yes. You will not be an ambassador for Akara. Glory. That won't be bad, eh? We can sign an endorsement. Okay. All right. So again is one way one way to ensure that you retain all you've learned is to practice, number one. Number two is you should also try to teach people when you have the opportunity to do so. One of the major tools to make this look like it's a second person, or it's part of you completely, is for you to teach. So if you have an opportunity, maybe in your area, somewhere around you, you have schools around you, they are requesting that they need somebody who can teach them in Excel, please do not be stingy with the little that you know as well. Do not be stingy with the little that you know as well. So that way, you also will benefit some people with what you've known, and at the same time, you would retain what you know a bit more properly. So when we teach and then it seems like, oh, these guys are good, these guys know what they're doing, they are excellent in all of these things, is because I can count the number of Excel sessions I've had. I don't teach only Excel. I teach a number of other things too, but Excel, I can count the number of sessions I've taught on Excel. I can count the number of students I've taught in Excel. So that is why, you know, when I get to teach it, it doesn't it's not stressful for me because I come to class, I don't have to prepare. I know all of the things I want to talk about. I know when to pause, I know when to stop, I know when to add. So because it's something I've done over and again. So if you want to also attain some level of mastery, if you have the opportunity to teach, please embrace it, even when you will not be paid. I know people don't want to learn this. People don't want to learn, people don't want to hear it whenever somebody tells them that you may not be paid for it. But again, it's you all are in this class. Did you pay a dime? So we need to also give back to the society. We need to try within what is in our capacity to also impact others. So we have done ours now. When you are in the position to also do, please do not shy away from doing so. All right, give me a second, then we start. All right, so let's begin. So enough of the pep talk. So I do this once in a while. I try to be a motivational speaker sometimes, but again, my my Akara mentality would not want me to go too far, because I cannot tell you that you can sit in your room and then you make more dollars with what you have known yet. Okay, so let's go into this. So far in the training, go to the chat, go to the chat, go to the chat. Tell me what you've learned so far in the course. Tell me what you've learned so far in the course. Yes, David, I'm back. Before you castigate me, tell me what you've learned so far in the chat. If the lookup value is number, not text, I tried it yesterday, it's returning an A. Yeah. So the way lookup works is that whenever you're searching for something that doesn't exist, by it not existing may mean that they are of different data types. One is text, one is number. They are not the same to Excel. We already explained that in one of the classes, that you can write the same thing that will look at the surface to be the same, but the way Excel will treat them will be different. One might be text, one might be numbers. And I believe we saw an example in one of the previous classes. So if you missed that, you need to catch up. Okay, I see people mentioning a lot of functions on the chart. Beyond functions, what else have you learned? Referencing. Thank you, Joshua. Okay, good. A lot of data functions. Well done. I see that. AY, well done. Extracting text from data. Thank you. Referencing Tolulokpe. Interesting. Use of different Excel functions. Absolutely. How to lock formula. What did we call it? Good. Bamiga over 40 functions. Super. So let's see. There's still something. Callings, logical thinking. Super. Which is an essential tool that you must have as part of what you would need before you call yourself as an analyst. Because if you cannot look deeply into things and think logically around it and question why things are the way they are, you should not call yourself analyst yet. So analysis is not primarily on you just writing those functions. No. So there are a lot of thought process that will go behind what you want to do before the manifestation of that which you would see at the end of the day. So you need to bear that in mind. Yes, Henry, thank you for that. You use F4 to lock. Thinking deeper than the periphery. Hey, Lydia, where did you take us to? Types of lookup functions. Good. How I can think on how to get my result. Atinuke, yes, that's valid. Francis, you learned about ETL. Yes, maybe you've not done so much on ETL yet. Just hold on, fingers crossed. When you get to your class on Power BI, you should have more conversation. How to master what you have learned. Oh, right. Did you teach that? I don't learn plenty function. Oh, boss. Hey, Femi, well done. Lagos boy. Data is life, some people. All right. So now, everything that we have learned so far, they are at the surface level of preparing your data for analysis. Think about it. When you wanted to do a lookup, you realize that for your data to be complete, there is something that you have somewhere that you need to bring into where you are. That was the reason why you did lookup. When you converted your data from lower cases to upper cases, or when you trimmed redundant spaces off your data, or when you used the flash fill on your data to automatically extract some things out, all of those activities were all in a bid to prepare your data in the way that you would need it to be in before you perform your analysis. So think about everything that we have done so far as the groundwork that would be necessary many times before you go on to perform analysis. So at this point now, we are now ready. We have all what we need in our data. Our data is super clean. Our data is ready to be analyzed. And so now we need to now begin. Koyum, what is wrong with the audio? Can anybody hear me? Can we confirm on the chat? Is it clear at your end? Yes, I know. Don't worry about the screen. Just hold on for now. Esther, yes, they are. And it's just contextual based on what I just explained. Sorry. Okay, it's very clear. Good, good. So now, the data set we want to analyze now is what I want to assume it has been shared with everybody. So let me try to activate my zoom feature so I can magnify the screen. Uh, okay, and I do this. All right, it's clear now. Very clear. Super. We saying no. Some people are saying no. Maybe the person that is saying no is even just staring fried noodles somewhere. And they just saw that people are responding, typing some things in the chat, and they wanted to type too. Okay, so apologies, please. If you see me get some breaks in between, I'm just trying to catch some breath. So let me try to explain this data set to everyone. So I need you to pay attention. I will try to explain this data set. When I'm done explaining it, you're going to go to the chart to now type some sort of questions you would have in mind to know or for us to get answers to from this data set. Send us the files, please. Is this your first class? You do not have the data set. No one has the data set. Is that what you guys are saying? The file has been, you know the normal format. So why are we always disturbing the class? All right, so listen to this, everybody. So I'm going to explain what the data set is about, try to put it into context so it's relatable to you. And then I would need you now, based on my explanation of the data, to give me some questions we would like to use the data to answer. This data is a sales data. And in this business, we have different lines of business. So think about our business like Dangote. So Dangote as a group has different lines of businesses. They have the sugar line, Dangote Sugar, for example. I don't work at Dangote, so I'm just guessing. They have the Dangote Sugar, they have the Dangote Cement, they have the Dangote Salt, maybe they have the Dangote Pepper. Okay, so those are the different lines of businesses. Within the different lines of businesses, we now have the different brands or the different products. So maybe in Dangote Cement, we probably have different kinds of products for cement. Perhaps, thank you, Bolale Dangote Refinery. So maybe we now have, or let's use the refinery. So within the refinery, we now have different products. So we have the petrol, you have the diesel, you have kerosene, and you have other products. So that is the same kind of business that we have this data modeled around. Flowers are not pepper. Thank you, Eunice. You know, I said earlier that I don't work at Dangote, so I may not know. Thank you. And it's not oil, it's not engine oil, it's not spanner, so I may not still know. Yeah. So now, this our business is situated in different regions of the country. We have our business, we have our locations around different regions in the country. The different locations also belong to different markets, and we have different stores. So let me tell you the interaction or the relationship between these three. Each store that we have, each store that we have belongs to a market, and each market belongs to a region. So think about it this way. We have a store in Ikeja. The store belongs to or is situated at Ikeja. Ikeja stays within the Lagos market, and the Lagos market sits within the Southwest region. So that is the sort of interaction between these. So you have the store, that is where we have a business store. The business store is situated in a particular market, and the particular market, whatever market it is, sits within a region of the country. When we now record our transactions, excuse me, when we record our transactions, we take record of our transactions by the actual date that the transaction happened. So the transaction happened on specific dates. Those dates would be tracked and recorded. We now have what is called fiscal period. fiscal period is the same thing as the financial period. Businesses generally would have what is called a financial year. So you have the calendar year. Businesses, not all businesses, but some businesses or most structured businesses would have a fiscal year. The fiscal year or the financial year is the year that the business recognizes to be the start of their own year, or the month that the business recognizes to be the start of their own year. I'll give you an example. We know that calendar year always starts with the month of January. However, a business, for example, might say that they were founded in April. So they want to recognize their own year to start in April. So April for them would be month number one. And that is important, especially in reporting, because you don't want to do all your calculations based on January to December. Rather, you want to do April to March so that you are fair in the distribution of the numbers and for some other reasons. So, a lot of the times, businesses will have a financial year that is different from the calendar year. They tend to also report by the financial year. To say that in the financial year 2024, how much did we realize as a business? And we could also say that in the calendar year 2024, how much did we realize? And for some reasons, it's possible that the financial year would be the same as the calendar year. Some businesses will still recognize January to December as their financial year because probably their business also started in January. While to some businesses, it doesn't actually matter. Financial year is not important to them. They still do all of their reportings using the calendar year. That is just an information that is important, and you should have that with you. So now, like I explained earlier, so any single transaction that happened would be about a customer buying one of our product models. So, for example, a customer buying cement from Dangote, or a customer buying PMS, or a customer buying DPK. We know that the customer has bought one of the products that we have. So, see the model column as the product that the customer has bought. Excuse me. Whatever product the customer bought, that would belong to a particular line of business. Just like when a customer who visits Dangote refinery buys petrol, that particular customer would have bought from the petroleum line of business, if we could call it that way. Or we say that somebody bought spaghetti and that person has bought from the food line of business of Dangote. I don't know if that is making some sense to us. Also, to us as a business, because of some kind of things that we want to track, we want to know on what day category did the particular transaction that we recorded happen. Our day category can be a local holiday, it can be an observance, it could be a public holiday, it could be a season, and it could be a work day. So maybe for us, we want to know some things around when are we selling the most? Is it on a local holiday or on a public holiday and the likes of those? Then the last two columns records the actual thing about the transaction, which is how much did we realize from that transaction. You get that on the revenue column, and how many units did we sell in that particular transaction. You get that in the units sold column. So every single line, every single row or record that you see here, thank you, David. Every single record that you see here on this particular data set is a record of a transaction. It's just more like David going into a store to order for a particular product and it comes in as this. Then we have Temitope came in, she bought some things, we recorded it as another set of records. So that is what we have as our data set. Go onto the chart, tell me 0 if you understood all I've explained. All right, somebody wrote 1. Not sure where we got the instruction from. And somebody wrote like 8 or 9 zeros. That is what we call outliers. So if you've heard about outliers before, those are practical example. Somebody wrote ZERO, how many? So what I need you to do now is, based on the explanation, now on the chart, tell me what are some business questions we should ask or we should try to get answers to from this data set. Thank you, David. I saw one question. Highest selling product, total amount made in the fiscal year, highest grossing region, lowest grossing region, best performing product, highest units sold, sales done in workday, sales done in public holiday. Thanks a lot for that. That's super. Sales per region, highest sold items in all regions. Which of the business, which location is selling higher? The best selling store. Profit made at the end of the year. Interesting. If this were to be a physical class, we'll have it documented. And if you have 100 questions that you want to answer from this data set, we must answer all 100. But what I do normally is that I will answer only like 5 in the class. You pick the 5 that you want me to answer, and you guys will go and answer the remaining 95. You set the question for yourself, not for me. It's interesting as a teacher when you are setting questions, but the problem comes when you are to mark the assignment. So I don't do that. I'll give you what I can mark. All right, so let's begin. Thanks a lot, everybody. So when we are ready to now analyze our data in Excel, there are a number of things, a number of routes that we can go by. One of the routes is we can use formulas and functions to analyze our data set. Every single thing that you guys have mentioned, we can use functions or combination of functions to get answers to them. That's number one. However, for this class, we want to use one very interesting and simple tool that Excel has. So that tool would allow you to get answers to these questions quicker and in a sort of an easy fashion. So you are not stressed. You don't have to overthink anything. You have to just understand the interface. You need to understand what to drag where, and you begin to do your drag and drop. So today, that's what we're focusing on. I'm sure you guys will love it. So the tool we're talking about is the pivot table. Pivot table. So pivot table is a data summarization tool. Pivot table is a data summarization tool. Somebody is saying the file is huge. I know the file is no more than 2 MB, most likely. So I don't know the file that you are referring to. So pivot table, again, is a data summarization tool. One thing that you probably would have heard from me before now is that whenever you are analyzing data, what you're trying to do is to summarize the data in a way that is meaningful, in a way that is actionable, in a way that is usable, in a way that it reveals what is inherent within it. And for you to achieve that, you need to sort of crunch this entire data set into something that is little. So that is why a way to begin is to use a summarization tool, which the pivot table is one, and it sits within Excel. For us to know this data set, has anybody tried to confirm how many rows we have here? Can somebody put that on the chart? How many rows or how many records do we have on this data set? I saw somebody wrote 22. I don't know where 22 is coming from. Somebody wrote 7. Somebody wrote 8. I don't know where those numbers are coming from, but the number of rows that we have on this data set is 30,800 rows. So now, transactions that ran into 30,800 is what we now want to summarize into few lines so that we can begin to understand what is happening within our data set or what has happened over some time. The question now is, where do we find pivot table and how do we activate it? If I come here, if you look at my screen, maybe you're forgotten. This is a tab, insert. If I come here to the insert tab, if I click, once I click on the insert tab, at the far left like this, I say pivot table. You go to insert, and then at the far left, you see pivot table. If I click on pivot table, before you click on pivot table, ensure that you are clicked on anywhere within your data area. Just click any cell within the data set. Click on any cell within the data set. Then go to insert, then go to pivot table. Go to pivot table, that's on the far left. Once I click on pivot table, there will be a pop-up. You get to see a sort of a dialog box. So this dialog box is the box that gives you some information about the pivot table that you are to create. So it says you want to create a pivot table, but the first thing that it's asking from you is to select a table or a range. What this means is that what data do you want to create the pivot table on? Because our data is structured, because our data sits well within Excel, there are no gaps in between. That's why it was able to get the actual bound for the data area. If you see, look at what I have here, it says that the data is sitting on what you see here as data, that is the worksheet name. So the data that we want to use for the pivot table is sitting on the data worksheet from cell A1 to cell J30,800. So that is the area that the data is sitting on. You also have the option to use an external data source, but you have not gotten to that yet. Remember, somebody said you are in JSS3, so you have not gotten to this level yet. Using an external data source would mean that you want to use pivot table on a data that is not in the same workbook that you have here. The data is sitting somewhere and you want to use pivot table to connect to that data. Maybe when you get to SS2 or SS3, you will learn it. Also, you now have another question here that you should choose where you want the pivot table to be on. Do you want it to be on a new worksheet or on an existing worksheet? What I typically would advise is you try to separate your data from your report. So which means that your data is already on this worksheet, this one, you should have your report on a separate worksheet. So your report should be on a new worksheet, which means your pivot table should go to a new worksheet. And then this adds to data model. This is another advanced thing that you don't have to talk about for now. It will not be covered in this course, especially for Excel. So don't worry, maybe there will be sometime in the near future an advanced class will be held and you can learn some of this. But it's good that you know that this is possible. So leave it by as the default options. So we have the data area already selected. We are leaving this on a new worksheet. So then I can go on to click on OK. As soon as you click on OK, what you would notice is that a new worksheet is opened up. If you have the new worksheet with this pivot table placeholder, if you have a new worksheet with a pivot table placeholder, go on to type 2 on the chart for me. Type 2 on the chart for me if you have a new worksheet with the pivot table placeholder. Aziz, type 2, type 2. All right. So now, on this worksheet, if you look at the far right of your screen, if you look at the far right of your screen, you would see a pivot table fields. You see a pivot table fields. Just below it, you see these guys here. These guys that I just boxed, where do you think they are coming from? These guys that I just boxed, where do you think they are coming from? Jeremiah, I know it's from the data set. From where? Thank you, Chuku. From the table title, from the headers. So these are the headers from your data set, which is a reason why if your data is not well structured, you have some things at the top of your data which you don't need as part of your analysis, then you will have issues here because those will come up here as your headers. So now, at the bottom, this is where we are coming to. We have 4 buckets here. We have the filters, we have the columns, we have the rows, and we have the values. These 4 guys, they are the superpower for the pivot table. And if you understand how to work with the 4 guys, you will be on the edge of working with pivot tables. Let's begin with this. Whenever we talk about data, data can be of 2 categories. data can be of two categories. Anyone knows? Tell me on the chat if you know. Tell me on the chart if you know the two categories data can be of. Thanks a lot, Victor. Your data can be quantitative or qualitative. Thank you, James Script. It can be numerical or categorical. So when we say that your data is quantitative, excuse me. Okay, thank you, everybody. So when we say that data is quantitative, sometimes I make mistakes with typing this, so I don't like typing it. So let's do this. So we said data can be quantitative or qualitative. So qualitative is the same thing as categorical. All right. Quantitative can also be said to be numerical. What it means is that quantitative means quantifiable. It means that that particular data or the set of data that we are saying is quantitative can actually be summed up. That's a way to know. When you have any column of data, for example, any column of data that you look at, and you see that the content of the column of data can be aggregated, you can sum it up. That particular column would be said to be numerical or it is quantitative. If this explanation is clear, everybody look at the data set that we have. Just navigate quickly to that worksheet. Tell me which of the columns that we have on that data set is quantitative based on the explanation that I just gave. So tell me which of the columns would be quantitative based on the explanation that I just gave. Excellent. Revenue and the units sold. So those are the two columns there that are quantitative because they are the ones that have the content of the column to be aggregatable. Any other kind of data that you cannot naturally aggregate, that data would be said to be categorical or qualitative. And your categorical and qualitative data, they are the ones that give context to your quantitative and numerical data. They just explains it. That's what they do. They make the quantitative and the numerical data, they make it understandable. So if this is clear to you, I'll go back quickly to our pivot table. So I'll take this guy out. Excuse me. It's my, so I click in the pivot table, then I go to the far right again. So now any data, any column of data that is aggregatable, which means that column is a quantitative data, then that becomes a candidate for the values bucket. So what should go into your values bucket, don't mind my handwriting, is any data that is quantitative. Any data that is quantitative is that which should naturally go into the values bucket. Your categorical data can then be pushed into the rows or the columns. Your categorical data can be pushed into the rows or the column depending on the orientation that you want for your report. What do I mean? Let me do something quickly so you understand. If I come here and I pick this region, I drop it in the columns. Look at this. I picked region, I dropped it in the column. Look at my pivot table. So it listed out the unique regions left to right. So this is the kind of orientation that you'll get whenever you drop anything in the columns. But if I pick that same region and I drop it in the rows, look at the orientation of our report. Now, what went left to right has now gone top to bottom. So which means your categorical data can either go into the rows or the columns, but what would define where you should put it would be how you want your report to come out. So whether you want your report to be of the top to bottom orientation, or you want your report to be from the left to right orientation. But it's clear that your quantitative data would always go into the values bucket. Now we are left with one guy here, which is the filters. So this filter, it doesn't naturally appear in anything you drop there, would not form a part of the major report, but it sits somewhere so that you can pick the items in there to now filter your report. So it's just more like you having the filter buttons on your data. You click the drop down and you're able to select a few options there that now filters the entire data. So this one will now be what will filter your actual report. But we have a better alternative. So most times we don't use this guy, we use the alternative. So you're going to learn about the alternative in the next class when we are building out a dashboard. If all I've explained is clear to you, please go to the chart and type what you understand so far. Love it. You can't say it's not clear. What exactly is not clear? You should have a question. We've had the class for about an hour. You can't say not clear. What part is not clear? You need to be precise. Okay, Olanipekun. The filters, if I put anything on the filters, excuse me, if I put anything on the filters, What I'm saying is that whatever I put in the filters, you would see that it doesn't form a part of the report. So this is the report. But what I dropped on the filter actually stayed at the top here. And what this would do is it allows you to select some things, which then would filter down your report. If you pay attention to this, you already see that. So that's what this would do. All right. Olanikpekun, I hope your question is answered. So, everybody on the chart, quickly, I can see quantitative data can either fit into columns or row. Good. Quantitative, are you sure? Quantitative values for quantitative data. Thank you, Yetunde. What you know so far? Somebody returned my question to me. I don't want to say what that person is. Okay, quantitative and qualitative data. Good. All right. So now, let's now begin to answer some of the questions that you guys raised. So we have this as our pivot table placeholder. So this is just a placeholder. It has no data on it. Let's assume that we want to first build a report that shows the revenue from or by the regions. So which is a way of us saying that we want to answer the question of how much did we make in each of the regions? How much did we make in each of the regions? So I can come here to select the pivot table placeholder. If you do not select the pivot table placeholder, if you click anywhere outside, you'll see that you do not see the pivot table field on the right. So anytime you will need that field, you need to have your pivot table selected. So once you have the pivot table placeholder selected like so, if I navigate to the right now, you see that I have the pivot table fields. So what you need to do now is, because we want to build a report that shows the breakdown of our revenue by region, I just come in here, I check the box for region, and then I go to check the box for revenue. By checking the box, it means you are clicking. So once I've done that, you'll notice that immediately you check the box for region, your region naturally went into the rows. So this is Excel using some sort of intelligence, or intelligence rather. And when you check the box for revenue, you notice that your revenue went into values. And now if we look at what we have on our pivot table, you see that we now have a breakdown of all of our regions, the 6 regions that we have in the business, and how much we made from each of the regions just within seconds. So you try this, everybody. So I'm going to do this again. You come here under your pivot table fields, just check the box for region, check the box for revenue, and you have your report. If you have this first pivot table, type 7 on the chart for me. All right, so we all got this. Good. If everyone got this, then tell me what you think is wrong on this report as you see it. The way it appears. Is there anything that's not looking nice? The figures are scattered, the format, excellent. Now you are beginning to think. as analysts and logically as some people have said. Excellent. So, how do we make these numbers appear better, more visually appealing, more readable? Because the goal of any reports that you're building is you don't want to stress your users. You want them to be able to look at your report and they get the information that they need. All right. So, what you can do is you can highlight your numbers and you input a thousand separator or a comma separator. So the shortcut to get that is Control Shift 1. Control Shift 1 would give you the accounting format which comes with the comma separator or the thousand separator as some people will call it. Control Shift 1. All right. Are we on the same page? 10 on the chart if we are. So now, thank you everybody. We have our first report. So if anybody has asked us which region is the most performing, you already have your answer. The question to which region is the least performing, you already have your answer in terms of revenue. So those two questions, which many people actually typed on the chat when I asked us to do, you already have answers to that, and so you can already tell your boss to that. Yes, we know our best performing region, and we also know our least performing region. All right. So I think we need to take a pause now. So you guys can go on your break. You take your attendance. We are back in like 5 minutes. Thank you. Catch ya later. All right. So if you're back with me, please type back on the chat. Everybody, if you're back with me, type back on the chat. Okay. So we have our first pivot table. Welcome back, everybody. We have our first pivot table already, which is a technical way of saying that we have our first report. So I want you to try out something now. But before then, let me show you how we can create a new pivot table from the existing one. Once you have a pivot table created, excuse me. Once you have a pivot table created, you don't necessarily have to repeat the same process again to get more pivot tables. So what you can do is that your existing pivot table, click anywhere within the existing pivot table, press Ctrl A to highlight it, press Ctrl A to highlight it, Ctrl C to copy, Ctrl C to copy, then you come anywhere to the side and Ctrl V to paste it. So what you have done is just to duplicate the existing pivot table. When you have duplicated the existing pivot table, you can now come here by after you just click within the new pivot table that you have. You come here to your pivot table fields and you uncheck what is there. Just uncheck the boxes for what's there, and now you have a blank pivot table. How did I do this? You go to the existing pivot table, click anywhere within, Ctrl A to highlight it, Ctrl C to copy it, go to a blank space, Ctrl V to paste. You can come in between the columns, double click to expand it. Then you click within the new pivot table, go to the pivot table field on the right, uncheck the box for region, uncheck the box for revenue. This now gives you a clean slate that you can bring in a new report on. So what I need you to do now is to create a report of units sold by revenue. But what is important to me at this point is I want you to find out which region sold the most units and which region sold the least units. When you have it, drop that on the chart for me. So we want to know which region sold the most units and which region sold the least units. I see northeast for most, northwest sold the least, I'm saying varying answers. We cannot have multiple answers. We are using the same data set. Northeast highest, north central lowest. Okay. Someone said northwest lowest. Someone said north central lowest. It's not possible. It has to be the same for everybody. Bolarewa, what happened to north central? Rita, northeast the highest. Okay. Okay. So now let's confirm. So let me drop the revenue, but at least I know that you guys have an idea of how to go about this and the units sold. So if I look at this, northeast with 208,000, in order to be sure, so I'm not picking the wrong number, I can click on any cell here and do a right click on that cell, and I go to sort, and I say that I should sort largest to smallest. If it sorts largest to smallest, so this is pretty clear now that northeast sold the highest, and then north central actually sold the lowest. Where am I going with this? Let's look at our revenue. Let me sort it. Let's sort the revenue also, largest to smallest. So, northeast, we realize the highest revenue from the northeast, 18 billion, and we realize the lowest revenue from north central, 6 billion, which actually makes sense. So the region wherein we sold the highest number of units, that's the region that gave us the most revenue. The region where we sold the lowest amount number of units, that's the region with the lowest revenue, which makes sense. So this is how you begin to think. But let's assume, let me push something to you guys. Let's assume that we find out that the region with the highest revenue is not the region with the highest units sold. Get me clearly. Let's assume that the region with the highest revenue is not the region with the highest units sold. What would you say could account for that? What are your thoughts? Abraham, it's okay. It's okay. Not everyone would understand. If you don't pay attention, you won't understand. Price difference, price of goods, selling price difference, okay? But let's say, assuming again that we sell, the business has uniform prices. We have the same prices across board. What then could be? I'm not disputing that price could be. Maybe in the location, we could sell higher because people would buy, and the same product in another location, we need to sell it cheaper so people will buy. So I'm not disputing that. That makes sense. But let's assume that the business actually has the same pricing model. So we sell the same at the same rate in all of our locations. What then could be? Price difference of product. Okay, that is pretty close. Number of customers. Okay, some product expired. Hmm. Petrol does not expire. Purchasing power of the customer. Difference in custom transportation. Okay, so these are all valid points. These are all valid points. But again, maybe a reason could just be that in the region why we realize the most revenue, but not the highest unit sold, it could be that in that region, the customers are buying more premium products. So you know that, let's say that we run a business and we sell milk, okay? The price that you'll get, the price that you get Luna, I'm just giving examples. So nobody should come and hold me that I'm promoting any any brands. No, I'm not promoting anybody. So what the price that you get in Luna milk is not the same price that you get a peak milk. So, and assuming that Luna and peak milk, they are the product of the same company. So if we have a location that most people there, they are always buying peak milk, that's peak Hollandia, you realize that you probably would have more revenue from that particular market than the unit sold, because even when people buy less, it will amount to a lot more revenue because of the price that we are selling that particular product, and because it's a premium product, which already then ties back to the point that some of you have mentioned earlier. Yes, like Just TV and Go TV. Thanks for that, Rebecca. So essentially, is that what you need to keep doing as you're analyzing is not just that you are creating tables and charts. You need to be paying attention to be thinking around the numbers to say that is it possible that you have explanation for what you are seeing, and the explanation that you would have for what you can see would be as an offshoot of your understanding of the kind of business that you play in. So if you understand the business model that your company is running, when you are analyzing the data set, some things will make more sense to you, and you'll be able to explain it to the stakeholders as the reasons why things are the way they are. Let's go on. So let's now create a new report. So here we want a report of, we want to see how much, or let's begin with this. Let's see what our top market is. Top market in terms of revenue. Top market in terms of revenue. Okay. So how do we get this? So let's begin the same way. So I highlight my existing pivot table. I'll highlight my existing pivot table like so. I'll paste it here. Then I would take out what's currently here. I'll take out what's currently here so that we have a clean slate. All right. So top market in terms of revenue. Want to know what our top market is? It means that I will need a column that shows the top market, that shows the market. All right. So I have this column. Then I select our revenue as well. So this is pretty much like what we've seen so far. But assuming that, one thing you should bear in mind is, remember this point always. You are trying to summarize your data. So you don't want, your stakeholders are not interested in looking at what was realized in all the markets. Most times they want to know maybe the top two, they want to know the top five markets, they want to know the bottom markets. But before I tell you why they may want to know that, can you guess? Go to the chat, think about it. Why do you think that the stakeholders in the business may not be interested in knowing how much we realize in all of the markets? Rather, they probably may would just want to know what our top three markets are, or what's our top five markets. Why do you think they may want answers to that question? Okay, investors, market purposes, investment decision. Yes, that's a cheat code. You cannot use it for me. Which one is for decision making? That's the reason why you're analyzing data in the first place. So everything you're doing is so that you can aid proper decision making. So why do you think they may not be interested in knowing what all markets is doing? Rather, they want to know what the top market is doing. I've not seen what I think is close to it. Yes, Peter, what to focus on? That is on the eye level, which is in fact the good point there, but I want you to go a bit more granular. Best product in the market and the weak one. Competitive analysis. Okay, let me help you a bit here. For every single business, they want to know where is their funds going into and where are their funds coming from. So now we are running a business and we have different locations. Every single location that we have as a business would have their running cost. And every single location that we have is expected to give us some returns in terms of revenue and profit. So, what businesses would want to know is that we have four locations, for example. We want to know which of the location is giving us the most revenue compared to the running cost of that location. Because it's important so that we can properly distribute our resources, so that we can properly optimize our processes. Let's say that we have four locations as a business, and one of the location is giving us 50% of the revenue. We would not be able to know this except we go in to analyze our data to see that, okay, so actually one of the four locations is giving us the most revenue, so that location should be our priority for whatever thing. In terms of the raw materials that they need for production, if we are shipping in raw materials, we must always ensure that that location gets their raw materials first. If we are trying to dispatch, we must always ensure that that location is put on our priority list. If you are hiring the best hands, we must always ensure that that location is getting the best of the best. If we are trying to build our headquarters somewhere, maybe that location is where we'll try to situate our headquarters. So all of this is so that we can make some decisions around our business, which will aid expansion, which will aid profitability, which will aid we getting on the tongues of people, and so that we don't lose focus where we should put our focus. So which ties to the last question, and I think Peter mentioned that, which is a case of we need to know what to focus on. So if you do not know which of your market is actually the most performing, you will just be distributing your resources in a way that don't make sense. Imagine a business, a market is giving you 10% of the entire revenue, and because that market comes first on your list alphabetically, that's a market that your supply chain manager is always pushing resources to first. That makes no sense at all. So those are some things that you need to bear in mind. So it may not make sense, excuse me, it may not make sense for the business to see the list of the entire markets. Rather, they want to know the most performing markets within the business. So let's say that we want to reduce this list to the top three. How can we do that? So focus. So this is what we are doing. We are not doing any calculations today. All right. So everything we are doing is just clicking, clicking, clicking. So if you want to get reduce this list to the top performing markets, maybe top three, what you can do a number of ways, but let me show you just one. You click on this drop down that is in front of your row labels. You click on the drop down here. Once you click on it, then you see this guy here that says value filters. You see this guy that says value filters. Once you get to that guy, you see some other options here, and at the bottom here you see top 10. At the bottom here you see top 10. How did I get here? You click on the drop down here, you come down here to value filters, you come down to top 10. Once you select top 10, you get this pop-up. So it says that you want to show top 10, but here we say we want to show top 3. So I'll just take out the 10, I'll put 3, and then I can go on to click on OK. As soon as I click on OK, you'll notice that my list has now been reduced to only show the top 3 markets by their revenue. And now I can easily speak through this in my report to say that it is the top market, followed by Abia, followed by Bayelsa. Are we good? All good? All right. So people, try. Try get me the bottom 5 markets in terms of revenue. Try get the bottom 5 markets in terms of revenue. Quickly. Once you have that, just copy the actual market that is the bottom. That's the bottom of the bottom market. Put that one on the chart for me when you're done. What if you have a tie? Good question. It will show both, or will show all of them. It will show all of the ties and the position. Okay, someone says Oshun. Okay, let's confirm. Daramola, are you telling Oshun sorry because they didn't do well? Subsidy. How did subsidy get into this conversation? Okay, I'm glad that you were able to figure that out. I know that the very smart people would have figured that, would have seen that while I was doing the top. So it's the same way. If I pick this, I try to duplicate it here. And then remember how we went about getting the top guys. So you just need to come here to the drop down, go back to values filters, go back to top 10. Once you are on the top 10, you'll notice that the top here actually has a drop down as well. If I click on the drop down, I can change this to bottom. And now I can put the number that I want here. I want to say bottom 5. And I click on OK. And now you see that this changes to show that Oshun, or the state of Oshun, is actually the list or the market with the least revenue. And what advantage would this give to us? So the advantage is that it lets us know the markets that we should least focus on. Or if all of our other markets are doing well, it lets us know that these are the markets that we should focus on so that we can bring them up to par with the other markets that are doing super well. So this is how you begin to think about the numbers that you see as the result of your analysis. So let's do one or two more before we ring the bell for closing time. So let's say that we want to know the we want to know how much we made in each month. So we want to know our revenue by month. Want to know the revenue by month. Somebody is feeling themselves. Which one is Oshun to the world? That's they're already feeling themselves already. You see now, somebody cannot praise you in peace. It's only that we call them state of Oshun. They are saying Oshun to the world. Okay, all right. So now, focus on this. Focus on this. Focus on this. Leave Oshun people alone. Oluwagbenga. Don't mind them. Don't mind them. All right. So, want to know the revenue that we made in each month. Somebody should tell me which fields would we use to get answers to this. So you're saying months and revenue. Where do we find months? Do you have months in your data set? Oshu is at the bottom. Chinedum, we know, we have seen it already now. Everybody can see it. You want Oshu people to come after us. By the way, I'm not the owner of the data sets. Before somebody will say that I wanted to. So we have trade dates and we have revenue. All right. So we can use the trade date and the revenue. So let's see what happens. If I select the trade date like so, and I select the revenue, this is what we have. So on our data, we have, because of the version of Excel that I'm using, and for people that are using more recent version of Excel, you would see that as soon as you check to your box for the trade date, your date is automatically grouped. So if you expand the 2014, you see all of the quarters. If you go into quarter one, for example, you see the month. So this is how it appears if you're using a more recent version of Excel. If you do not have a more recent version of Excel, for the old guys, this is what you would see. You would see something like this. All of your different dates will be dropped here and how much you realized on each day. You see that we are a very thriving business. On the 3rd of January alone, we made 121 million. All right. So this is what you see, and this will be pretty long for all of the dates that you have in your data set. But now we said that we want a report of our revenue by month. If your date came out this way, how do you now roll this up so that instead of showing you individual days, it shows you month? So you see January, February, March, and like that. So you can come here to any of the dates. You can come here to any of the dates. You do a right click. You do a right click on any of the dates. Then you see this option here to group. You see the option to group. If I click on group, now you get this grouping window which automatically detects the first date or the lowest data you have on your data set and the highest date that you have on your data set. It's more like saying the start date, like the earliest date, and the ending at is the latest date. How do you want to group this? Whatever you have selected here is what is going to group by. So we want these to be grouped into month. So month should be selected. If month is selected this way, I can go on to click on OK. Once I click on OK, then automatically you'll see now that instead of having individual days, we now have the month. So January till December. But someone should tell me, what do you think is wrong if I leave this report this way? If I leave this report this way, what is or what will be wrong with it? Okay, someone says it's only showing for a year. Okay, so what year is it showing for? Chris, it calculated month for both. Super, super. If you were around here, um, Prech, is that how you pronounce your name? Jesuome. If you were around here, I would have treated you to an akara dinner. All right. So what you see here, because we already know that we have 2 years of data. We already know that we have 2 years of data. So which means the January that you see here, it's not one January. It's the January for both years. So it might be difficult to explain that in January we made 7 billion. Did we actually make 7 billion in January? No, because the January we see here is January 2014 and January 2015. So what you can do is we can come in here, do a right click again and go back to group, and then we say that we don't only want to group by month, we also want to group by year. So I just select the year and I click on OK. And once I do that, now you see that we have a more intuitive report which says that in January we made 3.9 billion, and in January 2015 that was when we made 4.05 billion. Is it making sense to everybody? Making sense? Anyone? Your head is almost full, Ayaban. Don't worry. The little space that is left there, put Excel. You put more Excel, more and more Excel, always, always. And then I think you should remain some space for SQL and Power BI too. Excel only should not occupy your head. Victoria, be specific. When you say explain again, this, by this, what do you mean? How I got to bring up the year, or why I brought it up, or how I did it originally. Be specific with your question so I know what exactly to address. All this billion you've been calling, David, don't worry. If you believe, you will have it. All right? But work, eh? Don't sit at home. Can we apply functions to the pivot table as well? Yes, you can, but it's beyond this class. How you brought up the year. Thank you. So what you do, This was what we had. This was where we came from. So just click on any of the month. Click on any of the months, have the cell selected, then do a right click. Do a right click. Then you see this option that says group. So you go back in there and just select year. So your month is selected. That's why it's only grouping by month. You select year. If you want it to be grouped by quarter as well, you select quarter. If you want it to be grouped by days, you select days. If your data actually came with the time portion, so you have the date and the time, you can select the time portions as well to group by hours, group by minute and stuff. So I click on OK, and this is how we got it. So Victoria, are you good? Lydia, I know you would love pivot tables. Yeah, everybody will love soft life. Can you use Google Sheets? Yes, you can use Google Sheets, but I don't like Google Sheets, and I don't pretend that I like it. So okay, so let me take our questions now. Let me take our questions. Uh, it's been a very long day already. So all of the remaining pieces, how we go further from here to now turn this into a sort of a what people call a dashboard, we'll do that in the next class by God's grace on Wednesday. So let me try to take some questions if we have any. Otherwise, how can you convert that normal format, that's normal to format like $17 million? Don't worry. Hold on to that, Emmanuel. We'll look at it in the next class. So formatting your numbers is one thing that we need to pay attention to. So we'll get there. Don't worry. Learning is a sequence. It's a journey. So you don't jump steps. Can we start building our portfolio now? Obviously, Timothy, and I want to assume you would already have some conversations around it. Bolanle, why you must like formula? So, like I said earlier, every single thing that we've done so far today, we can actually use functions to do all of them. So, let me ask you guys, assuming that we want to recreate this, the region by revenue, we want to recreate that using formulas and functions. What function do you think we can use for that? What function do you think we can use for that? Can we share the WhatsApp link privately? I don't have an answer to that. So the admin would answer that. If data isn't structured, what will be the range? Excel will assume, but you can tell it by you highlighting what you want the range to be. Can the year be placed side by side for comparison purpose? What do you mean side by side? Sum ifs, excellent. So that's the function that you would have used if VLOOKUP care somewhere. If you wanted to go the route of functions, so you would have used the sum if function, so which is excellent. So that is how you can begin to think about it. So whenever you do anything in pivot table, try to challenge yourself to say that, okay, for example, if I was not allowed to use a pivot table, how would I have done this with a function? So because for every single thing that you can do with a pivot table, you can actually achieve the same thing using a function or some combination of functions. And you using functions most time is what will strengthen your Excel skill set, so that you can become the guru that you want to become. The guru and not a guru. How did you filter the most ranking market from highest to lowest? Oh, you missed that, Toby. You need to go back to that recording. Not having access to the resources, sorry. How can we get questions? I don't want questions around access. This is not the time to talk. If this is session 7, cry for crying out loud. Session 7 and you're asking me where you get your file. No. That's not appropriate. Can you tell us a site we can download data to practice? Yes, so you can always go to cargo.com. So go to cargo. So you go to cargo.com, you get some data from there. You go to data.gov, you get some US data from here, and you can ask ChatGPT to generate some data for you. Can we have the year showing from left to right while the month shows from top to bottom? Yes, you should be able to do that. So let's try this. Remember what I told you about the orientation of your report? So now if you look at what has happened, your years and the trade dates, they have been dropped in the rows. So your years is your years, your trade date is your actual month. Okay, so your trade date is your actual month. So now I can pick the year that don't sit on the rows. I want the guy to go to the column. So it says that there is a data and da. Yes, replace it. So this was what was causing the problem. So let me take this guy somewhere here. So you see now that we have the months like this, and then the years across like this. So that was why I gave that initial explanation that depending on the orientation of your report, that's what will determine where you should drop those categorical fields. Make sense? Anyone else? We have gone through all your previous lecture, but just data to work with now. Unfortunately, I can't help with that. There is a way the data gets to others, so you need to learn and follow that as well. Um, thank you, Femi. Whenever I try the unit sold and revenue, you always sum both. Yes, that is a conversation we'll go on with in the next class. Don't worry. That's the default, but there's a way around it in case you want something else. Uh, pivot by function. What's wrong with it, Victor? Revisit the top three and bottom three. Yes, you can do that with the recording, Christian. Um, I'm trying to see if there are more questions. I have the data, still I can't work with it. Sorry about that, Hope. Hope, you have hope, don't worry. I don't really gain much knowledge today due to bad network. Sorry, we are in Nigeria together. Uh, did you change the layout of the years? Yes, Olanipekun. You went to collect your akara then. Huh? Just kidding. Yes, I did. So what you would do is just to place the year in the columns. So somebody asked a question that was in response to that. Can we also use the pivot by function in place of sum if? It's not in place. So what you would have asked is, would pivot by get you the same result or similar result? If that's your question, yes, but you can't use it in place of. They are supposed to do different things even when, for this case, their output might be the same. I should attend to your question. Do you want me to scroll up? Where is your question? Your question is what you're supposed to repost, not that you should attend to your question. So I'm not controlling the screen. So the comments are coming, they are rolling in. Whichever one I'm able to catch is what I'm reading. So if it happens that you posted a question and then it flew up, I didn't catch it, you can always repost. Some people repost 3-4 times and then I get to see it, by the way. What is pivot by, Rebecca? It's a function in Excel. It's a more recent function, was just released last year. There's pivot by, there's group by, there's a number of other functions as well. But if you're not on Office 365 or Microsoft 365, you won't have those set of functions. What if we have a tie? I've answered this, Rita. Sorry. I answered it when you asked it initially, if you were the one that asked it earlier. Can you go over all the recording? Yes, you can. You can. It's on YouTube. Just go search on that on the Incubator Orb channel. Wouldn't need functions when PivotTable is there. You are not a mechanic. Okay, Toby. Well done. But there are limitations. PivotTable cannot always get you everything. So before PivotTable can work, your data must be structured. And if your data is not structured yet, you will always need functions to make that work, to structure it first. Rebecca, you're using 2013 and we are in 2025. So you need to upgrade. You don't have the group feature. Sorry, Fisayo. It might be the version that you're using, but I think you should have it if you're doing it right. How can you skip Akara? Don't worry, you can skip it. What? Please, that if function on your resource material, please can we try to work on it in class? I don't understand. Uh, how do I edit a file to enable work with? I know it's not for the class. How do I edit a file to enable work with? I don't understand your English. Please, I do not have I'm not. Do we have to copy and paste before we can open another pivot table? Sorry, you missed that, Bolanli. You need to go back to the recording. Because if you don't understand this, you have missed a lot. So it doesn't add up if I answer that question. It doesn't. What's the most recent version of Excel? That is Excel version May 2025. That's the most recent version. Uh, can you delete a pivot table? Yes, you can. Just highlight it and press delete on your keyboard. Then it's gone. But I hope you don't have to pursue it. We had Mr. Femi, the resource was different from yours. I tried to use what I learned on your resource. I kept getting errors. It means you didn't understand what Femi taught you. If you understood what Femi taught you, you should get what I did too. And the following class, I try to give a brief of that again. So if you need to watch that, you should go back to the recording. Can I just specialize on pivot only? Nope, nope, nope. So pivot table is just one of the things. It's just like you saying that you are in the science class, but you only want to focus on biology. You want to ignore physics and chemistry. You will not scale that way. WPS is asking you to pay. Please pay. Yay, okay. Can we see your face? You want to buy your car? No, I'm not selling a car. So don't worry. We are for those of you that got how can we upgrade your Excel? You have two options. It's either you go find anybody that has a link to an updated version of Excel, or you go buy a subscription based Excel. So, and for now, if you're buying the Microsoft 365 family, six people can come together to buy it, and I think you're gonna be paying something around 90,000 a year or so. So if six people are buying, that would be like 15,000 a year, which is pretty reasonable, really. So, but it's all up to you. Uh, this format come on all Excel. What format are you talking about? How can you change percent for each item for a large data set? How can I change percentage for each item for a large data set? Is by changing it now, or how are you asking? What exactly? So if your questions are not precise, you won't get an answer. So if this were to be a class where you can talk, of course you can ask in a way that is not clear, then I will prompt you to re-ask. But you're typing on the chat, so if it's not clear, there's no way I can help. How can we save the recordings? I do not know if you'll be able to download, but you can explore. If there is a download option there, you download. If there isn't a download option, then you have to always fall back to the YouTube channel to watch. Since the functions are much, how can we know always? How can we know? Uh, that question flew up, unfortunately, but I think it would have been an interesting question to answer. Must the pivot table come with a chart? We've not talked about charts now, Mr. Dikbo or Mr. Dapo. Give us some assignments so we can use the pivot table. Oh, people are confident that they know pivot table now. Okay. Please, does the format come on all, let's say, all the computations done so far? It depends on your version. So your version would dictate what you would have. Your version would dictate what you would have. So if you're using an archaic version, you won't have some functions, some functionality and stuff. Okay. So we have 2 more minutes. The alternative to the filter bucket, I already told you it's not sorting. I already told you that we'll look at it in the next class, so don't rush. Yeah. Can we create two or more worksheets? It flew up, sorry. Since the functions to the filter buckets, nope. Can we create two or more worksheets for pivot table? Yes, you can. If you want to be putting one pivot table on one worksheet, it's up to you, but things will not be organized that way. Can we create? I've answered that, Shegu. Can we use four-figure table instead? To do what? Give us an assignment to work on, sir. Okay, let's see what's gonna happen. So ideally, you're supposed to have some projects to work on, but let's see. I will work with my bosses to know what can happen. How can we know the function to use per time? Since there are more changes by practice, the more problem you see, the better you get at doing things. Please, can I use VLOOKUP if the lookup value is number, not text? I tried it yesterday and it's giving error. Your lookup value is number. What is your actual use case? What is your actual use case? So if you want to discuss this further, kindly you can send me a message on LinkedIn. Maybe it will be an interesting thing to chat about. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. It's 9 p.m. already. So we would keep it on a low for now. Ensure that you practice as much as possible. If you need to go over the recording, please do that. And by God's grace, we'll catch you again on Wednesday, where we would be winding down. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening.